I never imagined one kiss could alter the course of two bloodlines, or that my name would be whispered with both reverence and scandal across an entire star system. My name is Harvey, and I came to the alien colony of Zalira as nothing more than a linguist, a translator with a contract, a purpose, and zero intention of getting involved. But the universe doesn't care about intentions. She was a diplomat, Celine, an alien queen cloaked in wisdom and sorrow. Her presence pulled me in like gravity. I touched her soul before I realized I had touched her future. Then I met her daughter, Yura, a firestorm of curiosity and rebellion, raised in shadow but yearning for her own light. They were mother and daughter, and somehow they both fell for me. Now they both carry my children, 2 wombs, 2 generations, 1 human mistake, or maybe 1 cosmic miracle. The stars will never see us the same again, and neither will I. Because I didn't just change their lives, I became the dividing line between 2 worlds. And if you think that's insane, you haven't heard the half of it. I arrived on Zalira with nothing more than a satchel of linguistics data, a tablet, and a warning. Don't get personal with the locals. It was supposed to be a 6-month cultural integration mission, a bridge-building assignment. Earth had signed peace treaties with the Zalirians 3 years prior, and this colony, their lush emerald sanctuary carved into a biodome, was chosen as the test bed for coexistence. I was part of the human effort to decode their symbols, refine our communication, and ensure we didn't offend anyone with a misplaced word or unintentional gaze. Ironically, it was a gaze that changed everything. I first saw her on the 3rd day. Celine. She didn't walk. She glided like something half submerged in time. Her skin shimmered green beneath the filtered sunlight of the dome, and her eyes held this depth. Like every tragedy and triumph of her people lived behind them. She wasn't dressed like the others. She wore a blood-red ceremonial robe that trailed like breath behind her. And though she never smiled at me, I swear her eyes did. I was warned she was off limits. The Zalirians called her the first matron, not quite royalty but definitely revered. A widow, a leader, a mystery. I was also told she rarely spoke to humans unless it was politically required. And yet, on the 6th night, during a planetary storm that grounded all human transport, Celine invited me to wait out the winds in her private atrium. I accepted, half out of necessity, half out of curiosity. We spoke of languages, of how her people communicate through tones layered beneath vocal frequencies, of how humans misunderstand meaning when it's hidden beneath silence. She poured me this glowing nectar, sweet, slightly intoxicating. We sat too close for too long. Her fingers grazed mine while passing a translation slate. We laughed. Too long. Too softly. That night we didn't touch, but something touched us. When the storm cleared the next morning, she said nothing as I left, and I convinced myself it was just diplomacy. Just cultural courtesy. I boarded my return shuttle with my logic intact and my emotions locked away. Then came my second assignment. 8 months later, Earth wanted deeper cultural profiles from the Zalirian archives, and I was the only human fluent enough to access them. I was sent back to her, and that's when I met Yura, Celine's daughter. She wasn't her mother's shadow, she was her opposite. Where Celine was calm and graceful, Yura was wild and bright. She was a rebel wrapped in tradition, constantly testing how far the rules could bend before they snapped. And for some reason, she fixated on me the moment I arrived. She made it no secret. I was the earthling her mother had once sheltered, the man whispered about in alien circles, and now I was hers to decipher. And I let her, because I was weak. Because curiosity is dangerous when it's mutual, because one mistake multiplied. I didn't know they would both carry the same consequence. I didn't know I'd become a father to both legacies. I didn't know I was about to be caught in a spiral that no translation could ever explain. I wasn't supposed to be in her chamber. That much I knew. The Zilirians weren't strict by law, but they were sacred by nature. Touch was intimate, words were sacred, and space, especially personal space, was almost ritualistic in its boundaries. But that night, the storm had grounded every hovercraft on the Emerald Ring. Even the diplomatic shuttles immune to weather disruptions were offline. I was stranded on the outer terrace with no translator, no link to Earth, and no idea where to shelter. Then, she appeared. Celine. She didn't say a word. She just stood there in the doorway of her living atrium, tall, draped in maroon silk, eyes glowing faintly in the biolight haze, and lifted her hand slightly. Not a wave, not a greeting. More like an opening, an offering. I followed. Her chamber was nothing like I imagined. No sharp metal or alien tech. It was full of soft light and circular furniture, glass sculptures that pulsed gently as though breathing. The scent of ozone, flowers, and something I could only describe as ancient water filled the room. "Sit," she said, her voice layered in that velvety undercurrent only Zilirians had, like every word carried a heartbeat. I sat. We shared a hot drink, honey-colored, steam curling like dancing spirits. The language flowed easily between us. We spoke of her world, my world, then silence, not awkward, intentional, like the space between stars that gives galaxies their shape. She asked if I was lonely. I said yes. I asked if she was still mourning. She looked down at her hands. "Time doesn't remove memory, it just softens the color," she replied. Then she looked up at me. Not like a diplomat, not like an alien, like a woman. Her hand found mine across the curved crystal table. Cold at first, then warm, then tight. My chest ached, not with desire, but with some primal sense that I'd stepped past a line I didn't fully understand. I should have let go, but I didn't. She brought me closer, and her forehead touched mine. A Zilirian gesture of connection, skin to skin, mind to mind. And in that moment, I wasn't on a mission. I wasn't a translator. I wasn't earthborn or alien-bound. I was hers. That night, we didn't fall into bed. That would have been easier, cleaner. No, what happened was slower, more consuming. It was the way her breath trembled when I traced the pattern of her pulse on her neck, the way her words died mid-sentence when our eyes locked too long, the way she leaned forward, just an inch, just enough. Our lips met like we were syncing something more ancient than biology, and the stars beyond the biodome ceiling seemed to pause just for a second. The next morning we didn't speak about it, not a word. She nodded at me. I bowed in return, then I left. I carried that night like a secret tattoo burned into my soul. I convinced myself it was a one-time fracture in professionalism. I promised I'd never cross that line again. But promises don't matter when you've already rewritten your fate. And I didn't know yet that she wasn't the only one watching me that night. I returned to Zilira 8 months later, not by choice, by assignment. Earth's Diplomatic Research Council needed deeper archives from the Zilirian cultural banks, and apparently I was the only linguist who'd cracked enough tonal syntax to even be useful. The request came wrapped in gold-sealed commendation, but to me, it felt like a test, a trap, a return to the place I left half of myself behind. I tried to mask the churn in my chest as my shuttle descended. The moment the landing bay opened, Zilira's air hit me again, humid, sharp with mineral scents, and laced with something deeper, memory. And there she was, Celine, standing at the edge of the biodome entrance, dressed in a flowing violet mantle. She was unmistakably regal and unmistakably changed. Her hand rested low on her abdomen, subtle, but not enough to ignore. She was pregnant. I froze. My legs walked forward, but my mind stayed spinning. I greeted her formally. She replied with diplomacy, eyes flickering only once. Not anger, not guilt, just acceptance. But before I could say anything more, a second figure stepped into view, a younger one, lithe, confident, dressed in charcoal gray armor with ornamental glyphs etched across her chest plate. Her hair was lighter than Celine's, more copper than gold, and her gaze had no softness to it. So, this is the human. Her voice cut the air like a blade drawn slowly. Harvey, Celine said quietly, this is my daughter, Yura. Daughter? I blinked. I had assumed Celine's line ended with her. No records had mentioned heirs. No mention of Yura in the archives. No presence during my last visit. She must have been away, training perhaps in one of the off-world academies. But she was here now, and she was staring at me with eyes that looked far too much like her mother's. I've heard stories, Yura said, circling me slowly, like a cat appraising a stranger in its den. A human who speaks our language better than our own scribes. A man who was sheltered in the matron's chamber. Curious. Protocol, I murmured, already feeling the noose tighten. She smirked. Is that what we call it now? Celine didn't speak. She simply turned and walked away, letting the silence grow like a vine between us. Yura stepped closer. She's different, you know, she said. Quiet. Measured. Never impulsive. But ever since you left, she's changed. I didn't answer. Because what do you say to the daughter of the woman you may have accidentally made history with? The days that followed were delicate. Yura was everywhere, assigned as my escort, my liaison, my daily companion. She challenged everything I said, questioned every theory, poked holes in my translations. Not to insult, but to engage. It wasn't hostility, it was curiosity on fire, and I couldn't help but admire her. She wasn't like her mother. Yura was movement. Where Celine was soft gravity, Yura was the storm that danced on the edge of control. One night, while cataloging ancient star maps, she leaned in too close. Her voice dropped. Tell me, human, she whispered, what does my mother see in you? I turned to her slowly. I don't think I'm supposed to know that. And yet, she said, fingers brushing mine, you're still here. It wasn't planned. It wasn't smart. But attraction doesn't ask permission. It moves like wildfire through forests we thought were stone. A week later, Yura kissed me, and I kissed her back. There was no whine, no storm, no silence this time. Just two beings in a quiet, glowing archive, breath tangled, fingers trembling, truth forgotten. And in that reckless collision of heat and longing, I made the same mistake twice. Only I didn't realize, not yet, that this one would come with jealousy, scandal, and a second child. Both of them were carrying my future, and I was about to lose control of the present. The moment the truth surfaced, time didn't stop. It shattered. One heartbeat, then another. Echoes within echoes. That's what the prenatal scan revealed. Two fetuses, both hybrid, both carrying my DNA. One within Celine, the other inside Yura. I had been summoned, formally this time, to the Elder Spire, the sacred tower where high matriarchs and alien geneticists meditated, judged, and examined anomalies that threatened the Zilirian bloodline. I wasn't asked. I was ordered. And when I arrived, they were already there. Celine seated in silence, her hands folded over her round belly like a queen accepting judgment. Yura standing at the far corner, arms crossed, jaw clenched, her eyes refusing to meet mine. The air was so quiet, I could hear my own shame breathe. Elder Naus spoke first. His skin was pearl gray and etched with wisdom tattoos. His voice felt like cold stone being dropped into still water. Never in our genetic history has this occurred. One outsider, two wombs, mother and daughter. What you have done, human, is not only a biological rupture, it is a cultural earthquake. I tried to speak, but Celine raised her hand. graceful yet final. "I knew," she said softly. "I knew he would be drawn to her, the same way he was drawn to me." Yura's voice rose like a breaking wave. "You let it happen?" "Would you rather I had stopped it?" Celine asked, turning toward her. "Denied him from you, after I had already taken him for myself?" Yura's eyes burned. Pain, fury, something deeper. She shook her head. "No, Mother. I'd rather you hadn't shared him at all." That night I didn't sleep. I didn't go back to Celine's quarters. I didn't go near Yura's training lodge. I sat alone under the artificial moonlight, watching tiny garden creatures buzz over glowing flowers, thinking about how two lives now carried pieces of mine and how neither woman would ever look at me the same again. They shouldn't have to, because I failed them both. The story, of course, didn't stay secret for long. Zillyrian society was built on ancestral memory sharing. Whispers don't whisper here. They sing through roots and wires and ritual. Within 2 days, I wasn't just the human translator. I was the father of fracture. Some Zillyrians found it fascinating, a genetic anomaly worth preserving, a rare moment of biological convergence between Earth and Zillyra. Others called it blasphemy, a violation of generational purity, a crime wrapped in the perfume of seduction. Alien news cycles exploded. Interstellar political forums debated the ethics of interspecies reproduction. Earth's embassy went into quiet lockdown. And I couldn't even look either of them in the eye. The worst part? It wasn't the shame. It wasn't the political chaos. It wasn't even the judgment from the elders. It was watching the way Yura began to dim. She was fire when I met her. Now, she was smoke. She stopped showing up for her blade rituals. Her sharp wit dulled into silence. She'd walk the glass corridors with her arms wrapped around her belly, like she wasn't sure it belonged to her. Celine tried. She offered soft words, dried herbs, even laughter. But there was something between them now. Something broken. And it had my fingerprints all over it. One night I caught Celine in the garden atrium, alone. She sat beside the singing fountain, bathed in soft azure light, her hair cascading over her shoulders like alien silk. Her eyes were tired but calm. I sat beside her. I didn't speak. She did. "Do you regret it, Harvey?" "I don't know what to regret anymore," I replied honestly. "Was I wrong to love you?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You loved me with a human heart, but my daughter needed someone who saw her soul first." That was the first time I realized. This wasn't about betrayal. This was about gravity, the kind that pulls planets together no matter who gets caught in the orbit. I was that gravity, and now I had to decide. Was I going to collapse everything further, or find a way to keep two suns from burning each other alive? There's no pain like watching someone you care for slip away, slowly, silently, and right in front of you. Yura stopped looking at me, not out of hate, worse, out of indifference. She drifted through the biodome like a ghost, her once defiant gait replaced by something fragile and aimless. Her words, when she spoke them, were brittle. Her stare lingered on nothing, and when I called her name, she never turned fast enough, never turned fully, like she'd already placed a wall between us too thick to see through. And Celine just stood at the center of it all, watching the spiral like a queen in a crumbling palace. Her belly had grown. She moved slower. Her voice softened. She tried to keep everything stitched together. Yura, me, the stares from the council, the growing whispers in the public spheres. But this wasn't diplomacy anymore. This was family, and families don't come with treaties. The elders had stopped interfering. "Let the bond run its course," they told Celine. "Whatever form of unity or ruin emerges, it will become our history." Yura took that as a sentence, not a solution. One morning, she didn't show up for her neural therapy session. Not a big deal at first. Until 2 hours passed. then 4. I searched the halls, the meditation chambers, the archives. Nothing. Celine was already ahead of me. She had mobilized 2 security agents, her face drained of all color. Her bracelet signal stopped pinging 5 kilometers past the outer dome, she whispered, fear barely hidden. She ran, I asked. She fled, Celine answered, and she's nearly due. We took an air sled toward the edge of the Zalirian wildlands. Past the biodomes, the world was far less curated. Jungle vines wrapped around jagged quartz spires, and alien birds shrieked in languages older than any archive. The sled picked up a faint biopulse near the fallen temple stones, ruins Yura once called her secret place. And there she was, curled beneath a fractured column, cloak barely covering her trembling body, arms protectively around her swollen abdomen. Her skin was pale, not from color, but from energy. She was going into labor. Early. Too early. Yura! I jumped down from the sled, my boots skidding on moss-covered rock. Why? Why out here? She looked at me for the first time in days. Her lips parted, but only one word came out. Alone. I knelt beside her. You're not alone. You've never been. Tears streaked her cheeks. I didn't want to become a copy of her, not her mistake, not her echo. I thought, maybe if I ran far enough, the child would just be mine. I placed her hand in mine and pressed it to my chest. This child is yours. Yours before anything else. But you're not a copy, Yura. You're you. And I was too blind to see that in time. Her breathing grew erratic. Her claws dug into the ground. Sweat beaded on her temples. The contractions were coming hard now. Help her! Celine cried from behind me, suddenly at my side. Her voice cracked for the first time. Please, Harvey, just help her. I had no medical kit, no protocol, just instinct. Celine supported Yura's back while I whispered calming words in both Earth tongue and Zalirian chant. The child came in silence, no crying, no shriek, just a soft gasp and a pulse of light that shimmered briefly from its skin before fading into the normal pale of infancy. A girl, breathing, alive. Yura collapsed into my arms, weak but smiling faintly. She's real, she whispered. Mine. Hours later, in the same twilight-colored sky, Celine's contractions began. We barely made it back to the Biodome Medical Sanctuary. This time, doctors were prepared. This time, I stood on the other side of the glass wall, hands clenched, heart pounding, and just like her daughter. Celine brought another girl into the world, 2 children, 1 human father, 1 alien bloodline, 2 generations, 1 night, 1 fractured family, now breathing again. I stood between their beds that night, one on the left, one on the right, Yura fast asleep, her child curled beside her. Celine, eyes open, watching me, smiling softly. Not as a lover, not as a rival, but as something beyond definition. We are not enemies, Harvey, she said. We are threads, interwoven, torn, and maybe someday mended. I reached out and touched her hand. Not out of romance, but out of something deeper. The night after both births, the sky above Zalira shimmered with unfamiliar light. Twin comets passed overhead, so bright they cast dancing shadows across the biodome floor. Some believed it was coincidence, others whispered it was prophecy. That 2 children, born of 1 human, 2 generations, and 1 alien bloodline, had altered the trajectory of fate itself. I stood between their cribs, 2 girls, one swaddled in deep violet silk, the other wrapped in silver-threaded moss leaf. Their skin was soft with faint bioluminescence, a delicate pulse beneath the surface like starlight trapped in flesh. Celine entered silently behind me. No more pain in her eyes, just clarity. Her hands folded gently over her abdomen, no longer swollen, but forever changed. She looks like you, she whispered, peering into Yura's daughter's crib. And yours? I said, glancing to the right. Has her strength already? She has yours, too, Celine murmured, smiling faintly. Across the hall, Yura was seated upright in a cradle chair, the baby sleeping on her chest, her eyes no longer dulled by shame or confusion. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since everything broke. I don't hate you, she said. I thought I would. I thought I should. But I don't. I approached slowly. Then what do you feel? She looked down at the child in her arms. I feel like I was forged through fire, like the pain, the jealousy, the war inside me. It gave birth to something I never thought I could love this much. She looked back up. And I feel sorry for you, Harvey. Why? She chuckled softly, dryly. Because now you have 2 alien daughters, and their mothers under one roof. That's a hell of a legacy for a man who just wanted to translate words. Weeks passed, then months. News of the dual lineage birth spread like supernovae through interstellar diplomatic circles. The Zilirian High Council held secret meetings. Earth's United Federation requested genetic samples. A galactic bioethics committee was formed. But here, inside the dome where it all happened, we were just a strange, broken, healing family. Celine and Yura never went back to being what they were before. But they weren't enemies anymore. They became something more complicated. 2 women who shared history, bloodlines, and now, a future. They took turns raising the children together. Celine's wisdom, Yura's fire, my awkward, clumsy, stumbling attempts at parenting across species. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we shouted. Sometimes I just sat in the garden with both girls in my arms, wondering what ripple we had started in the universe. One morning, I awoke to find both children outside, barefoot, laughing, chasing bioluminescent bugs beneath the dew-kissed trees. Their giggles echoed like music that hadn't been written yet. And I realized something that nearly broke me. They weren't just my children. They were symbols of something that had never been done, of boundaries that had been broken, not for power, but for love. Celine stood beside me that morning, arms folded. Yura came from behind with herbal tea, casually handing it over like years of tension had never existed. We stood together, all 3 of us, not perfectly aligned, not entirely at peace, but together, watching what we'd made, watching what we had unleashed. Do you think the universe will understand them? I asked aloud. Celine responded first. Number. But it will learn to. Yura added without looking at me. And if it doesn't, they'll teach it. That night, as I tucked them into their sleep nests, one girl reached for her sister's hand and held it tight in her sleep. And I knew. The world wouldn't be ready, but they would be.